Okay, so we are on chapter 12. And I mentioned this last time, but I actually did count this time. This is going to be our 365th Mishlei Shiur. So after tonight, then you will have, if you would like, one shiur for each day of the year to listen to, if you'd like to occupy your time that way. Yeah, okay, so this is a 12-1. And I think this is a completely different topic than what we've been talking about. Ohev Musar, Ohev Da'as, Vesone Tochachas Ba'ar. Anyone want to try translating that?
A man of discipline loves knowledge.
Wait, Ohev Musar.
It
doesn't say man.
I'm sorry.
Yeah.
Loves a love of discipline is a love of knowledge.
Okay. One who loves discipline.
I think that's why I said man, because just the
okay, yeah, right. I just wanted to make sure it doesn't, that it doesn't say the word man here. One who loves discipline loves knowledge. Okay. Visone tochachas bar. Now I don't know, you don't have to, I mean, it's weird it says tochachas, but you could just treat it as tochacha. One who sone tochacha.
The one who hates.
Yeah. One who hates rebuke. Bar. Bar is a very rare word, but we say it in Mizmor and Shabbos.
Burn or consume or eradicate, I think.
Okay. So this is an interesting thing. Okay. So the shortish of this bar is like be'er chametz, so it's like to destroy or eradicate. Here is I'll just show you so you can see. If you look at the word bar, this only appears in Tanakh in 5 places. 3 of them are in Tehillim and 2 of them are in Mishlei. And the one in Tehillim that you know is from Mizmor and Shabbos. Ish ba'ar lo yeda uksil lo yavin azos. I don't know how many of you know.
I feel like I remember that the translation of this is boorish, but I don't know what that means.
Yes, it's boor. Yeah. Okay. So boor this is one of these terms where the Hebrew, I think the English word came from the Hebrew. Let me just see if this is true. Etymology of boor. Okay, so it came from Dutch, but there's a Hebrew word boor also. But yeah, so bar. So okay, well, what is the definition of a boor? So they translate boor. They say boor is an unrefined or ill-mannered person. So let's look at our translations here. Okay, Metzudas ציון says bar is shote. Okay, shote is a fool or an idiot. Al shem shenimshal kabehemos, but it's because he's compared to an animal. V'hu miloshan anachnu ubi'irenu. So it's like in Bamidbar when it says we and our beasts. So if you want to look at it like boor is a fool, that's what it means. Like it's a type of fool, but it has like the implication or the connotation of like animalistic. Okay. So animalistic fool. We'll see what some of the English translations say in a second. Targum says man derachim mardusa rachim yediasa v'sanim machnasusa burahu. Okay, so that's just a straight translation. We can delete this. Our scroll says one who loves knowledge loves discipline, but he who hates rebuke is a boor. Living Now says he who loves moral instruction loves knowledge. Which, by the way, we were struggling. I think I don't know if it was this year or if it was. Yeah, I think it was this year. Wait, what was the last pasuk we did? Last one we did was. No, so it wasn't recently. Maybe it was our morning shiur. We were trying to translate what musar is. And I was saying musar is like the whole subject matter of Mishlei. So moral instruction is not a bad translation. I kind of like that. He who loves moral instruction loves knowledge, but while he who loathes rebuke remains a boor. Okay, I don't know where to get remains. Yeah, Tamar?
Just a comment on ArtScroll, which is that I guess the first half of the pasuk is ambiguous in terms of which thing is like the modifier.
Yes.
It looks like they take it the opposite way.
Oh, you're right. Yeah. Okay. That's good. So we actually list that as a question. Yeah. And then Alter says, who loves reproof loves knowledge, but who hates rebuke is a brute. Brute is actually a good word because right. A brute is a fool, but has like the implication of like very like an animal, Okay. And also you notice that he says reproof. So we said that musar can either mean discipline, like the study of discipline, or it can mean like another word for rebuke. Okay, it could be a synonym for rebuke. Okay, so let's do this.
Wait, can I ask a grammar question?
Sure.
Why wouldn't Ohev be like commands, like just love musar and love knowledge?
I don't think so. I think command would be, wouldn't command be Ahev? I think.
Wait, what would be different?
It would be an A instead of an O.
I
think. I'm not 100% sure. But I'm also what do you call it? I'm also more convinced because all of the English translations say that one who loves, a lover of, Musar is a lover of Das. Yeah, so I'm gonna go with that.
Okay.
Rifki?
Yeah, I'm not sure if you just said this when you were talking about Musar and Tochacha, and if you didn't, then it's a question. Is there actually a difference between Musar and Tochacha, like in terms of like if they could both mean rebuke?
Okay, so what is the difference between Musar and Tochacha, seeing as how they can be synonyms? Okay, yeah, Ariel.
Yeah, my question is like, what's the relationship between someone who loves rebuke, therefore he loves knowledge, and also with the second half, like someone who hates rebuke is a brute. Like why?
Okay.
Why?
Okay, so these are gonna be the two main questions. So what is the relationship between loving Musar and loving knowledge? Okay, and then also let's ask the question that Tamara was highlighting, which is I don't know exactly how to express this, but like, is this does this go both ways? Does this go one way or both ways? Okay, in other words, what I mean by that is, i.e., is it saying if you love discipline, then you will love knowledge? Okay, or is it saying if you love knowledge, then you love discipline? Or is it saying both? Okay, and maybe another way, if you're visual, you can go like this. So one possibility is like this. One possibility is you have a big circle and then you have a small circle. Okay, and it's saying the big circle is lover of discipline. Okay, and then inside is lover of knowledge. Okay, and then the other way is, so that's one way, and then the other way is to reverse it. Okay, I'm not going to draw another one. Okay, in other words, is it that like if you love knowledge, then we can be certain that you're in the category of someone who loves discipline? Or is it the other way around, that if you love discipline, then we can be certain that you're in the category of lover of knowledge? Or is it just that it's both? That if you do love one, then you have to love the other. And actually, let's ask that as a separate question also. Alternatively, is it possible to love discipline without loving knowledge, or to love knowledge without loving discipline? Okay, so Ariel's question is just the main one, which is what's the relationship between the two? But this is all the permutations here. Okay, Isaiah.
Okay, it's not really like a new question, but yeah. I think that, if you told me someone's an Ohev Das, I wouldn't have thought that Ohev Musar would be like connected. Like it seems to me very disconnected. Like I would have thought like Ohev Limud or Ohev Torah or something like that. Okay. But Ohev Musar, it seems out of left field a little bit.
Okay, so let us ask this as another one of our standard questions, which is, what is the Hava Amina, which means what might I have thought without this pasuk? Okay, so in other words, I mean, I know that's not exactly the question that you're saying, but I think that's what it's getting at, which is that that apparently I would not have thought that if you love knowledge, then you love Musar, or if you love Musar, you love knowledge, because Musar and knowledge seem to be different things. Like it sounds like on the surface. In fact, let me ask this question here also, okay, which I don't know if anyone's going to ask this. I'm not stealing anything. Is this true, right? Are there people who love knowledge but don't love Musar? Okay, or vice versa. Okay, like for example, I can guarantee you that you'll find lots of people who have PhDs, in philosophy or whatever, but they don't like discipline. Either they don't like moral instruction or they don't want to be rebuked. So what do we say about those people? Is that just an exception? Or are we saying that that must mean they don't really love knowledge? What does that mean here? Okay. Yes. My dad has a question now. Yeah.
Okay. Are we talking, what kind of discipline are we talking about? Are we talking about self-discipline or externally enforced discipline? And does that make a difference?
Okay. So what does Musar mean in this context? Is it talking about, is it talking about internal discipline or external like reproof or both? Or does it make a difference? Make a difference. Yeah, Ayala?
Also, what is the practical implication?
Yeah.
Because I feel like if you love,
okay, good.
I guess, that's just a question. What is the practical implication?
If you
love it.
Yeah, go ahead.
Right. If it's saying that you should love it, then if you should love one, then you should love the other. I think it's tied up in the question of what is the relationship?
Yeah. So what I thought you were going to say, and maybe we're going to say this, is if this is talking to someone who already loves one of these things, so then evidently they don't need this, and it's talking to someone who already hates rebuke, then they're not going to listen to this, in other words, it sounds like whether the audience is someone who loves knowledge or discipline or someone who hates rebuke, it sounds like they don't need this pasuk, right? It's not going to really be talking to them. Yeah, Ariel?
Yeah, I was going to ask, what is it all knowledge or is it a specific type of knowledge?
That's a good question. Okay, so what does da'as, knowledge, refer to in this context? Is it all knowledge or Torah knowledge or Mishlei knowledge or something else? I'm just giving those as examples.
Okay.
Yeah. Did you have something else? Or
I had another question, but I'll just wait.
Ricky?
Can I add to that question?
Oh, sure, you can add to it, yeah.
And in terms of das, how does it differ from other words used for knowledge, bina or chachma?
How does this word differ from other knowledgey words? Knowledgey is not a word. Knowledgey words like chachma, bina, haskel, right? All the other Mishlei knowledgey words. Yeah. Rivki?
Yeah, this could be included in other questions, but I think it's still good to just verbalize.
Mm-hmm.
It doesn't really sound like the first half has a consequence. The second half, says then they're a bar.
Well, the second one also doesn't really have a consequence, right?
It just says this is a negative thing to be, but it doesn't really say in terms of practical decision making, it's not really saying anything about either one, and especially the first one, which you would assume you want to hear what positive benefits you would be getting.
Yeah. Okay. So I'm actually dividing this into two questions here. So we have, what is the practical implication? What are the consequences and benefits? What is it telling you to do? Right. To do. And then who is the audience? And that's when we have the question of it sounds like the audience. If you say the audience is anyone in the pasuk, then the people in the pasuk don't need this. Yeah. Okay. Isaiah.
Yeah. Okay. Technically 3 questions. What does it mean to be Ohev Musar? What does it mean to be Ohev Das? And what does it mean to be Done Tochacha?
Okay, yeah. Okay, good. So where should I put this one? Let's say here. Okay, what does it mean to love Musar and love knowledge and hate rebuke? Yeah. By the way, side point here. I don't know if I was doing this in your day, Rivki and Avital, but I used to teach this pasuk as one of the first pasukim in Mishlei that I would teach. You could see why. This is really lends itself to like basic Mishleic analysis, a lot of basic questions. On the other hand, that could be paralyzing, right? Because you can imagine we're gonna have a lot of difficulty here. All right, fine, yeah. Okay, was that the end of your question, Isaiah? Is the hand left over?
Yeah, that was it.
Okay, yeah, Moshe?
Yeah, so what's like the relationship between the first half and the second half?
Okay, good. I was waiting for someone to ask that question. So what is the relationship between the first half and second half? Now, just to point out methodology-wise, sometimes we ask that question because we see absolutely no relationship between the two halves. Here, we see a relationship, right? The first half is loving Musar is clearly the opposite of hating Tochacha, but loving Das and being a bar, like what is the relationship there? Or like if you say Tochacha is different from Musar, then you have to like be more specific in what the opposites are. So how are these opposites? Okay, good. Yeah, Tamar?
I don't think we asked what's the definition of a bar and how they're different from other kinds of fools.
Okay, yeah. Okay,
people.
good. So in fact, I showed you, or I pointed out that Mishlei only uses this word twice. Okay, once is our pasuk. The other pasuk is in Mishlei chapter 30. Ki bar anochi meish v'lo binas adam li. I am a bar of a man, and I don't have human understanding. And this is not even written by Shlomo HaMelech. This is written by Anshe Chizkiyahu, which ideas are from Shlomo. So technically speaking, Shlomo only uses this term once. So this is not our typical Mishlei cast of characters here. Okay, so our question is, what is the definition of ba'ar? And like, how does this differ from other Mishleic fools? And I'm going to add such that Shlomo opted not to use the typical Mishleic drop down menu. Okay, right? Like he could have just said Ksil and we wouldn't have blinked twice, but he uses this new word. Yeah. Okay,
I have a question on that one.
Yeah, sure.
Can we assume, because of the way that it's like contrast in the pasuk, that ba'ar would somehow be the opposite of? Are you able to scroll up for a sec?
Yeah.
Yeah, that it would somehow be the opposite of ohev musar, so like hating musar.
So I think it's going to be ohev das, right? Because
no, that's what I meant.
Right. Yeah. I think it is reasonable to assume that, but then we also have to contend with. In fact, I'm gonna just give a little bit more insight here because we're already talking about bar. And since this is a unique word, I feel like we're kind of dependent on the meforshim. So we had Mitzudas Tziyun who says it's a shoteh, it's a fool. Okay. Actually, I'm going to make a list here. Okay. Ba'ar encompasses, okay, fool, animal-like. Okay. And then I saw there's a book for people who like Rav Hirsch. I don't know if this has been in my at home in Seattle for the longest time, and I finally brought it here. The Rav Hirsch Etymological Dictionary of Biblical Hebrew. And so it's a dictionary of Shorashim, and it's Shorashim according to Rav Hirsch's definitions. Okay, so Rav Hirsch says there's no such thing as synonyms in Hebrew, and like everything that seems related is related. So here's what he says. So he points out that ba'ar is, like Avital said, literally means to burn or to destroy. So primary meaning is burning or setting fire. Second definition is damaging property. Third definition is removing or doing away with. Fourth definition is being devoid of reason. And then fifth definition is unrestrained animal. So what he's, I think, analogizing this to is he's saying the primary meaning is burning or destruction. So you can say like destroyed of reason, or just like a fire is like unrestrained. You can say like an unrestrained animal. Okay, and then you have opposite of love's knowledge. Okay, these are like all the implications we can glean from the meforshim that we've seen so far and from the psukim here. Okay, Ariel.
Yeah, I don't remember if we asked, but like, how is he a brute? Like, what makes him a brute?
Yeah,
and
I think that would be included in our question that we just typed. What is the definition of bar? Right.
Okay, and can I also ask? Sorry to scroll up for a second. What's the scenario exactly? I mean, like, like how Yeah, what's the scenario?
Okay,
yeah.
so let's say it like this. Is this talking in general, or is this about a specific decision-making scenario? Now, I would imagine most of us are inclined to think that this is talking in general, but it could be talking about a specific scenario. So we have to keep that in mind. So it's a good question. Yeah, Rivki?
Yeah, just like methodology wise, in terms of like trying to develop an idea, do you think that it would be better, not better or worse, but like in my head, like Musar and Tochacha do have like different connotations, but I don't know if that's like true even, or like you think it's just better to go, because my brain is like, oh, like, you know, maybe he's just using different words to convey different ideas, but also sometimes it's just, like you said, poetic. So
okay, so I'm going to do something I don't usually do, which is before we think about the questions, I'm going to read to you some of the meforshim who do differentiate between Tochacha and Musar, so you can have stuff to work with, because I agree with you that like I might have my own ideas about what the difference is between the two, but like I don't know if that's based on the facts, and I feel like for the sake of like accuracy, then we shouldn't go on our own speculations here. Yeah, Tamar?
I wanted to elaborate on there was a question about what does it mean to be Ohev Musar and Ohev Das, and that I think that specifically what is the difference between that and, let's say, accepting Musar or acting with Das? Like, what does it mean that there's this other
what is the difference
word here
between love and hate versus like accept and reject? Right. Meaning seemingly you can accept Musar but not love it. So are you in this category or not? Seemingly not. Okay, good question. Okay, let me just give you now what I said I would give you, which is just a basic definition of Musar. Okay, so definitely assume that Musar and Tochacha can be interchangeable. Okay, that's the default assumption. Most meforshim do not differentiate between the two. Okay, however, okay, you want? I'm going to type this out also. Hold on. Possible ways to differentiate between Musar and Tochacha. Okay, so there are three. Way number one is they are the same. Okay, which is not a way at all. Okay, number two is I think you could say Musar is ambiguous, because Musar can either mean like the study of character development, the study of Mishlei, and Tochacha can be like a particular rebuke. Okay, so that's another way. Musar equals like the science of Mishlei. Okay, the study of moral perfection. Okay, perfection of character traits. Okay, versus Tochacha, which would be a particular instance of rebuke. Okay, now the third definition is this new commentary, again, relatively new on all Torah. Ho'il Moshe, who's a student of or a contemporary of Shadal, who says Musar hu yoser mitochachas. Musar is more than Tochacha. Okay, we'll see what he means by more in a second. V'hu mi makor yasar v'asar v'hesir. So maybe this is from the I remember I used to tell my high school students that there's an ancient machlokas in Hebrew grammar, whether the shorashim, whether the roots are 3 letters or 2 letters. And so I think like this is giving a, going along with this theory that really samech reish is the main thing. So he says this is related to yasar, which is to afflict, asar, which is to bind or like, imprison, and hesir is to remove. So what is his definition? Sha'adam acher misiru min hadavar bal korcho. So Musar is when someone else removes you from the thing against your will. Okay. The Tochacha milashon vikuach. Tochacha comes from the expression vikuach, which means argument, or we say also muchach, which means it is like evident, or hochacha, which means proof. Okay, Sha'adam acher medaber al libo ki ra po'al, that another person speaks to your mind and says that this action you did was bad. Okay, then he gives this shot, which we're not going to look at right now. So this is another interpretation. So he says Musar could be equals someone forcibly removes you from the bad thing, whereas Tochacha is someone convinces you why this thing is bad. Okay, so that's what he says. And then I think the Malbim says either something similar or something opposite. And then we'll start working on the idea. Malbim says, Yesh hevdel bein musar ubein tochacha. Shatochacha hu misvaker imo barayos hasechel umare lo mato v'mara. So he goes with the Hoyel Moshe. He says, tochacha is when someone argues with you through intellectual proofs and shows you what is good and what is bad. Musar machricho lekabel devarav aide onshin. Musar is when someone compels you to accept their words through punishments. O shemis yarim mipnei onesh hamiyaser, or when you are disciplined because you're afraid of punishment. O mikitzbo, or you're afraid of someone's anger. Vitzivuyav, or his commands. Kekatan misyarim mipnei agadol, like a kid is afraid of an adult. O shehamiyaser modia lo onche Hashem lemamre devarav, or the person giving you musar tells you about God's punishments for people who rebel. Okay, fine. So that's similar thing. Okay, which is someone forcibly removes you from the bad thing or intimidates you with scare tactics. Okay, versus tochacha is someone convinces you why this thing is bad based on reason. Okay, so there are your options for how to take tochacha and musar. Either they're the same, and Mishlei just uses different terms for poetic reasons, or musar is like the study more perfection and character traits, and tochacha is a particular rebuke, or what we just said. Okay, so because the text would be too small if we went like that, then what I'm going to do is I'm going to post all of the questions in the chat, and then I'm just going to have the pasuk on the screen. Oh, you know what? I can't do this. Hold on. I forgot that the chat has a limit. Are you using your hand for a question from before thinking, or are you raising your hand preemptively for an idea?
Before thinking.
Okay, yeah. What's your question?
In terms of where to start thinking,
yeah,
should we be trying to get like an insight into personalities, or should we be looking for like a practical takeaway?
I can't tell you that. I don't know. Yep. Wherever your intuition goes. Okay. So I think we are now ready. So for our thinking minute. Okay, so let us take a minute to think. Hold on just a second. I'm gonna move this. Why is this not working? There we go. Let's move this here. All right, so let's take a minute to think. And then as usual, we will start with people who have full approaches or almost full approaches. And then we will proceed to people who just have fragments of ideas. Lot to think about.
I just have a question before we, can you just remind me in terms of the levels, where is Das on like the 3 for Chachma, Bina, and Das?
Okay, yeah, good question. And we are not going to go and define all those, but I'll just show you in the way Mishlei typically uses it. Hold on. I got to show you 2 pasukim. One is in chapter 3, which is talking about how God created the world. And it says, no, it's in chapter... Yeah, Hashem b'chachma yasad aretz konen shamayim bitfuna bedato tehomos nivkeu ushchaki mirafutal. Hashem founded the earth with wisdom. That's chachma. He established the heavens with understanding. That's tevuna. Bedato tehomos nivkeu ushchaki mirafutal. And with his knowledge, he cleaved the depths and the heavens drip dew. Okay, and then there's another one which is more accessible. I just always forget where it is. Which is in Mishlei. Wait for it. Mishlei 24:3 and 4. B'chachma yibane bayis. With chachma, a person builds a house. Uvitfuna yiskonan, and with understanding, he establishes the house. Uvadas chadarim yimalu kohon yakar v'naim, and with knowledge he fills all of its rooms with all precious types of wealth and pleasant types of wealth. So I'm not saying this is always the case, but in Mishlei, at least, we see two examples where Chachma is the lowest level, then Tuvuna is a higher level, and then Das is the highest level. I think that's evident from the pasuk that we had here.
Can we start the thinking minute over again?
Yes, let's start the thinking minute over again. Sorry. Okay, Rivki, what do you got?
Okay, so I was just thinking, like, based off of what we were just talking about. So I'm going with number 2 for like the definition of Musar and Tochacha. Okay. So I was thinking that someone who loves like developing themselves and building their character, I was thinking that that's related to loving knowledge, because you can only like really truly attain knowledge in a way that like you have that character trait. Because if you're full of yourself and if you're not willing to like listen to like how other people can help you improve yourself, like if you're not learning all these different things about how to improve yourself, then I feel like it's very hard to like learn with someone or learn from someone. So then that's like the first half. Okay. And I do think that in terms of like the circles, like how you drew out like knowledge and so with that, I was thinking that I don't know if it could be both ways. I'm assuming it can be, but I think it makes sense to say that in order to like really love knowledge, you have to have like that character trait, not fully developed, but you have to be working on that character trait to like really get that knowledge and the benefit of like loving knowledge. Okay. So that's like the first half. And then the second half, I was thinking that like specifically why is he using bar, not ksil or some other word, because it's like really implying that this person is not only like dumb and like not smart, but also like they're not contained. Like they're not someone who is willing to listen to be able to improve himself. And that's not just a ksil, but it's also someone who is just out of control and like a wild animal, whatever you want to say. So that's why someone who hates rebuke, and it doesn't even say, I guess, that type of rebuke, because you're assuming that they don't like that type of character perfection. And then tochacha is a different kind of study, which is, I guess, like I was thinking like in the Torah, it says like you shall rebuke your neighbor. Like if you see someone doing something wrong, then you should rebuke them and tell them what they're doing wrong. So this person is like, because they don't have the musar in their character, they're not the type of person who would enjoy like loving knowledge. Okay. All right, good. So I think what I'm going to do, what I'm sensing because of the nature of the pasuk, and I think what I want to do is let's, instead of doing what we usually do of pursuing one person's idea fully, let's get a bunch of approaches on the table, because I have a feeling that there are going to be a lot of overlaps. And I think the more approaches we hear, the more we'll get a sense of like, I have a feeling it's going to look like there's a lot of approaches, and then it's going to get narrowed down to like a couple different approaches, and then we can like refine those. Okay. So I like your ideas, Rivki. And I just want to bring one proof, not to fully flesh out the idea. And it's funny because anyone here right now was in my morning share? No. So in the morning, this is very, very much in line with what we're doing. The pasuk we're currently working on, the morning Mishlei Shiur, and I quoted the same halacha, but there's actually a halacha which we don't apply nowadays for whatever reason in the Rambam in Hilchos Talmud Torah, which is about the laws of learning Torah, chapter 4, halacha 1, about who you let into the Beis Midrash. Now, when it says let into the Beis Midrash, it means like who they basically allow into yeshiva. Okay. We only teach Torah to someone who is a student who's proper, which means either they're beautiful in their actions, like they have perfected actions, olatam, or they're like neutral, like evenly keeled, like not having flaws and not having perfections. But if someone is not walking on a good path,
meaning in terms of their actions, machzirin oso lemutav. So we return him to the good. Umanhingin oso b'derech yashara. We make him practice upright behavior. Ubodkin oso, and we test him. I don't know how. The achkach machnisin oso lebeis midrash, and then we put him into the base midrash. Okay, so you see from there that at least the way that Chazal envisioned it, then they would not let someone learn unless they had good behavior and good midos, and so that's like supporting what Rivki was saying, how like there's I don't know how you put it, Rivki, that you can't get knowledge if you don't have the good midos. Is that how you said it? I can't remember now.
Yeah, basically just that if you don't have like that character trait of wanting to perfect yourself, like I don't know if it's really possible to be able to love knowledge and gain knowledge.
Yeah. Okay, good. All right. So let's just go in order here. We'll get everything out on the table and then we'll put it together. Isaiah, go ahead.
Okay, so it's pretty similar to Rifki, but I think it's a slightly different emphasis. So I think your idea was a good idea to do it this way. So someone who is Ohev Musar, I think it's someone who is like, they recognize, not only do they like accept Musar, but they recognize it as like an idea that like their character perfection is like an important thing. And so they actively like, they want to hear Musar. They want to improve themselves because they want to know how they can improve.
Right.
So a person like that, they're like primed to improve their character traits. Yeah. It's like they are, because even they might not already have the best character traits, but they love receiving character traits from other people, and so they'll like automatically sort of go up the ladder.
Yeah.
Whereas someone who hates Tochacha, not only do they not learn the lessons that people are trying to tell them, but they take the ideas that they hear from those people, and I think that like they create a resentment towards them, and that like drags them down into the pit of foolishness. And so they're sort of de-priming, they're the opposite of priming themselves to grow. They're priming themselves to not grow, because they're not only going to not hear lessons, but they're going to sort of drag themselves down by hating the lessons.
They're like shutting off avenues of growth from the get-go before they even like apply them to themselves. All right, so let me just articulate which questions you're answering. This is really good. So one question you're answering is Tamar's question, which is what's the difference between, well, you're answering your own question, to love Musar and to love knowledge, and Tamar's question, what's the difference between loving Musar versus just accepting it? So accepting Musar is a good character trait. No one's denying that, but you can be someone who accepts rebuke, but without going and seeking it out. But this is talking about someone who's actively going and trying to improve their character by seeking out Musar, whether it be like definition number 2 of like studying moral perfection, or like, let's say like, reading biographies of people who were, rebuked for certain things, and then taking those and say, oh, well, does this apply to me? And then applying it to yourself, versus hating. It's not just that you don't accept it, it's that you actively put up a resistance to it and like block it off and just don't even go near it. And certainly you're not seeking it out. Okay, good. So that takes care of Ohev Musar and Sonia Tochachas. Now, did you also want to say, make a move about Ohev Das? Or
is that they're like Mamela and Ohev Das, because their trait of Ohev Musar just pushes them to Das. Like they don't actively love Das, but they.
Okay, are you taking a stance on what we mean by Das?
Yeah, character development.
Character development. Okay, fine. Okay, so you are saying then. So then let me refine what I start on the wrong foot then. So Musar, you're saying, is particular rebukes, but then Das is really knowledge of like Mishlei and how to improve your overall character.
Yeah.
Okay, I see. Okay, so if you seek out particular, so you're taking so now. Sorry, I started on the wrong foot. You're really taking this first definition that they're synonyms, but it's saying, and that's why I use the term ladder, that if you love particular instances of Musar, that is naturally going to lead you to the study of character perfection, and then that's going to benefit you a lot. Whereas if you, I think this part goes well with the bar from Rav Hirsch. If you hate particular rebukes and you cut yourself off, you're going to end up remaining an untamed animal. In terms of not being subject to like higher levels of character perfection. Is that accurate summary?
Yeah.
Okay, good. Excellent contributions. Okay, Ariel, next.
Yeah, I kind of wanted to add on to Rifki's approach and possibly even Isaiah's. Okay. So yeah, I kind of it's interesting because like if you kind of like put brute and knowledge on a spectrum, like it seems like they're on opposite sides, like completely opposite. Like the brute is kind of like really close to an animal, or may even be an animal, right? Versus knowledge is like closer to God in a sense, like at a different level, right? So I think that it's kind of showing you two different methods of getting to either one, and I think it's kind of like the golden circle in a way. Like like if I love, like I think the first half of the pasuk is like, one who loves discipline loves knowledge already, meaning like he already loves, he's a man of knowledge, and like he's gonna just naturally love discipline. It's kind of like at his core he loves knowledge, right? And then it's kind of like a consequence that it's not a consequence, but it's like automatically he's a person who loves discipline, because like if you have discipline or rebuke, then like you're gonna want to naturally grow. It's just who you are as a person, right? So but someone who's like an animal, right, that's who he is as like a person. Like he's never gonna want rebuke. It's kind of like it's just who he is. And I think like this pasuk is, I don't think this pasuk is talking to each one specifically. Like it's not talking to the brother, and it's not talking to someone who loves knowledge. It's talking to someone in between and showing them like two different paths of like who you can take, and like the person who hates rebuke and the person who loves rebuke. It's kind of showing them who they are as an individual.
Okay, there's one thing I missed. Maybe you said it and I just missed it. What type of knowledge are we referring to here, according to you?
It's any
knowledge. Okay, so that's part I'm not clear on, because so Rivki was talking about any knowledge. One who loves Musar loves knowledge, and the implication is if you don't love Musar, then you don't love knowledge, because she was saying how you need certain character perfections in order to be able to pursue knowledge. That's Rivki's approach. Isaiah was saying this is specifically knowledge of character improvement, and you need rebuke. You need to love particular rebukes in order to get there. So I'm not clear. Are you saying an idea that is like one of those, or are you saying a different idea for like what's the relationship between loving Musar and loving knowledge, according to you, if knowledge means all knowledge?
So it's possible that it might be a slightly different idea, but I think that you can like the common denominator between the three ideas is that it's the spectrum.
Okay.
So
okay, all right. Like, so let me actually, I'm gonna just start taking very brief notes, not full sentence notes. Rivki's approach was Musar as necessary like development to access knowledge. Very brief notes. Isaiah was loving particular Musar will lead to loving knowledge of character development, will prime you or whatever. Yeah. Whereas hating particular rebuke shuts you off and condemns you to remaining an animal. I think I see now where the Living Knock translation got he will remain a brute, and then Ariel's is a spectrum. Okay. Ba'ar and loving knowledge are a spectrum. And
actually I think just to clarify, I think the according to the three ideas that was just said, like the spectrum I still think applies to everyone, because like the reality is like whether or not you're doing this for self character development or not, like they're like the complete opposites of each other, just in terms of like how you live life. But I think the difference between what I'm saying and what Rivki and Isaiah is saying is that the golden circle type of
when you say golden circle, do you mean like a Simon
Sinek type of golden circle?
Like what?
Like if you're a man of knowledge, you're gonna want rebuke.
Okay, right.
Like
right.
That's who you are at your core. I think that's the difference. Like that's what I'm saying. different than.
Okay, so the real question for you is going to be, and this is true for everyone else also, but the real question for you is going to be, who is the audience then?
Yeah. I thought I answered that, but the answer to that is the audience is someone who is just observing the world and just kind of like identifying, trying to put himself in a place specifically. Like it can't be the brute and it can't be the person who loves knowledge because they don't need it.
Right.
It's gotta be someone in between.
Okay, so this is how you get on into the cycle. Okay.
What was that?
This is, you're saying this is how you get onto the cycle.
Yeah.
Okay. All right. Good. Avital.
Okay, so it's not like a totally full idea. And I feel like it's a little bit differently than how I usually look at the Mishlei Pasukim.
Okay, that's fine.
But I was thinking that like maybe it's all one and the same person, that a person who loves Musar, as in like a more general, I guess, like the study of moral perfection. So that's what I'm saying for Musar. Okay. And then Tochacha, I was saying in terms of more particular, so I guess it's both number 2.
Yeah.
And that somebody who loves like this idea kind of Musar, this more general thing, they could have like a love of knowledge, but this same person, if they hate all the individual instances, I almost think like the idea of like ba'ar, like of burning, is like kind of something that could have been like you had all these good like general ideas, but when it comes to those particulars and actually taking things to like the particular level, which at the end of the day, I think that kind of does form who we are, like the particulars.
Yeah.
Then like we're kind of like, that's what kind of leads to trouble. That it's not good enough to just have this general like love. Oh, like I love knowledge and I love thinking, but like,
Okay. So I really like this idea. So when you say it's one person, you mean, I think the way you would translate the pasuk then is one who loves Musar does love knowledge, but if you hate rebuke, then you're burning it all up or something like that, like, and the idea is like, I'll give you an example of this, is like, let's say you are an employee in like a new job, and you tell your boss like, oh, I love learning the business, and I love like improving my skills and stuff like that. But then let's say every time the boss like brings something to your attention that you could work on, then you're like, oh, that's not really my fault, that's not you, and you just shut it all down. So you might like view yourself as someone who loves knowledge, but you really don't. And it's good that the test is in the particulars. Is that the idea you're saying?
Yeah, exactly. And I'm like, I feel like I've spoken to a lot of people who are like, oh, like I'm really growth oriented. And then I'll be like, oh, so like, what are things like you're working on? Like, not in like an attacking way, but like, like I'm just like working on lots of things. Or somebody once told me that they had went to Israel and got such a new perspective. And like me and my cousin were like, oh wow, like really one new perspective. And they were just like a different point of view. And like whenever you would ask them about like particulars, like it didn't seem anything changed,
Yeah. Okay, that's a good point. All right, so so you might think that you love knowledge and love of Musar and love Musar, but if you hate the individual rebukes in the particular, then you are a brute who is burning up all that potential. I think that's like, I think plain pshat is it's a brute, but like the connotation is like you're just like, you're wasting it. So the audience, according to Avital, is someone who is allegedly interested in Mishlei, but saying, no, this is going to be the test. The test is when someone actually rebukes you, are you going to be drawn to that and say, yes, this is what I've been waiting for, like this is actually like, I've been talking about all this character perfection. Now I actually get to do it. Or are you going to like deny and like make excuses and all that stuff? That's a really useful idea.
I think add to Avital's idea.
Yeah, go ahead.
Just like psychologically, like I really like that idea because I think like we probably all fall into this trap at some point or another. Like Avital's saying, you're like, oh my gosh, like I love Mishlei, I love this and I love that. But I think like psychologically, like it's very hard to actually like work on yourself and change things. So like in your example, it's like, oh yeah, like you can improve on this. You're like, what are you talking about? Like, I'm good at that thing.
Yeah.
So I think like it's just like a very good like emotional pasuk and Amital's way of reading it.
Definitely, yeah. And I will tell you just to make us all feel better about ourselves, because that's the point of this. No, I'm just kidding. That Rabbi Moskowitz's strategy, I think, was very good, which is that he said when you start learning Mishlei, start by seeing Mishlei fools in other people and looking for the mistakes in other people. And then eventually one of these days, you're going to be like in the middle of like diagnosing a Mishlei fool, and you're like, oh, that fool, it me, you know, and you'll start to see it in yourself. But it's much harder to see it from yourself from the get-go. So I think it's a good idea to start with other people. Yeah, Avital, did you also want to add something to your idea?
No, I was basically going to say like what Rifki said. Like when it comes down to it, something very easy to fool ourselves with.
Yeah, that's good. That's good.
I had a question about her idea.
Sure.
Just in terms of like reading the pasuk. So are you saying that Ohev Musar, Ohev Das is kind of like could either be good or bad depending on if they accept the Tokaka in the second half or not?
How would you answer that? I have my
Wait, can you repeat your question?
Yeah, so the pasuk says that someone who loves Musar loves Das. So you're saying, it sounds like you're saying that someone who loves Musar might love Das if they don't hate Tokaka. And if they do hate Tokaka, they actually don't love Das. I think.
That's a smooth way of reading it. But I
don't know if I would necessarily say, like, I think the first part is true on its own. Like somebody who like almost in theory, they really do genuinely like the idea of it. And they are somebody who likes knowledge. I think I'm also bringing like the more general concept onto Das also. But that like when it comes down to like any particulars, like that's when they really struggle. And that's at the end of the day, really us, you know?
Yeah, I think that is different reading than what Isaiah was saying, but I think Isaiah's reading is a good reading though. Isaiah was saying, if you love Musar, then you love Das. But if you hate Tokaka, then you don't really love Das. Yeah, I actually have a whole approach to the pasuk based on that, but I'm going to save mine until the end. Okay, who is next? Moshe. Oh no, I think we're having the connectivity problem again. Sounds like you're underwater. All right, so we'll do our thing again, even though I don't usually read the chat. If you want to type anything into the chat, then I'll read it. But sorry. Yep, I don't know what it is. All right, Ayala, you're up.
Okay, so maybe something like what Rifki was saying in the beginning.
Yeah.
But I was kind of thinking that like Ohev Das, I was translating Das as like the way you used it in the pasuk. You said like the highest level of like Chachma, Tuna, and Das. Right. And I was thinking like Ohev Das isn't just someone who's like involved in Das from time to time, but it's like someone who's like completely like that's their being. Yeah. And I think that the opposite of that would be the Ba'ar, which would be like an animal. Like this also ties into what Ariel was saying about like the spectrum of the opposites. But then I was thinking that like the Ohev Das, in order to reach that like complete level of Das, I think like the Havamina would be that like you could just learn and like love knowledge and whatever, and like that's how you could reach that. But this is saying no, you have to be Ohev Musar, and like with that, and I would translate Musar as like I think discipline, either the study of it or like practically like disciplining. And I would say Tochachos is the same thing.
Yeah. And
that like if you don't have that self, like you first have to have like some sort of control over yourself and discipline for yourself in order to reach that. Like I think like that all inclusive, like I would say Ahava is like your entire being as knowledge. Yeah. I think if you're in any sense still like an animal or like don't have control over your being, then you can't ever reach that perfection. And like the trap is to think like, well, I'll just learn and then that's how I'll reach it. But like that doesn't work. And you can never really love knowledge if you're still in some ways attached to like physical pleasure.
Okay. Yeah. Okay, good. You know, Ayel, your idea is so similar to my idea that if it's okay, I'm going to go ahead and say my idea and then merge them, unless Yosef, you also have something similar to that. Yeah. Okay. Yosef, why don't you go also? Because
So, okay, I think it's like this. It's giving like a definition. I think that it's saying that someone who is really an Ohev Das, will want it to be reflected in their character traits and their actions.
Yeah.
Right. And so saw the fist pump there. And because really, if they see that it's like the ultimate truth, then they're going to want it to be reflected in their actions.
Yeah.
And there's a certain type of person who's going to want to study the theoretical and the conceptual as its own study, right? But they're not going to want to integrate it into their lives and into their actions, right? But in reality, they're not really a Ohev Das. In other words, if they really are like resistant to integrating into their personality, if they're really a sonei tochacha, so then it's calling them a ba'ar because they're because it's an intelligent person who's devoid of reasoning, meaning it's someone who is pursuing knowledge, but they don't have like their framework is corrupted because they're not actually viewing it in the objective realm, which is that it should guide everything they do and everything and the way they should live, right? And it's saying if you really, it's like a litmus test for being an Ohev Das is, are you an Ohev Musar? Are you willing to integrate this into your personality and into your actions?
Yeah. Okay, good. All right, that's exactly what I was going to say also. Okay, good. Yeah. Anyone else want to add to this idea or this approach? Or you have other ones? Or I'm going to say it the way I was going to say it. So what I was thinking of is when I was thinking Ohev Das, okay, let's see who's the first person to get this answer. What is the Greek way to say Ohev Das? Philosopher. Okay, right? Yeah, right. So philosopher is philosophos, is one who loves knowledge, right? So I think that there are people who view themselves as philosophers because they like learning, or because they are involved in intellectual things. But like exactly like Yosef was saying, the litmus test of whether you actually love knowledge, we don't value knowledge just because it's fun. We value it because it's real. And if it's real, then it has to apply to you. You have to be willing to apply it to yourself and to live in line with it. So if you allegedly love knowledge, but you hate tochacha and like you refuse to like consider yourself in light of your knowledge, so then you don't actually love knowledge. You might love like intellectual stimulation, but you don't actually love knowledge. And if that's who you are, then you're really as good as an animal. You really are like you're no different than an animal, because animals also don't govern their actions based on knowledge of reality, and they also like pleasure. You're basically just like, in other words, what makes the human unique. Yeah, it's true we have free will. It's true we have like the ability to think abstractly. But what makes us really unique is that we can relate to conceptual ideas as a means of perceiving reality, and that's a realm beyond just pleasure seeking. So if you're not taking your knowledge that far, then you're just a pleasure seeking animal that doesn't want to be governed by knowledge. Yeah, Yosef?
I would say, in addition, you might be even worse than someone who just seeks pleasure, because you're corrupting the whole purpose of your mind and your like additional existence into this new thing of like, oh, you're even serving the one part of you that's not for taiva, for like your desires, to something that is for that.
Exactly.
Right?
Yeah. So a cow can't help being a cow, but you can not be a cow. Yeah.
And you're using the part of you that's not a cow to be a cow.
Exactly. Yeah. That's bad. Yeah. Ariel.
Yeah. I mean, like it's true, because like, like I personally, actually, can you stop the recording for this part? Sure. It might be in your best interest.
Okay, good. And then after I call on you, I'll read what Moshe typed in the chat. I'm just going to really quickly summarize what we did, and then I'll check the chat. So this, if it's okay, and if Yosef and Ayala, if there are nuances in what you're saying that you feel are not entirely this idea, like you want your own idea, then that's fine. But I'm going to list this as Ayala, Yosef, and Rabbi Shneiweiss here, which is this pasuk. Pasuk has the litmus test for whether you are a true philosopher, okay, i.e. One who loves knowledge. Are you willing to look at yourself in light of that knowledge? Okay. If not, then like if you hate rebuke and are not willing to look to apply knowledge to your own life, then you don't really love knowledge, only intellectual stimulation or kavod or something else. And you're an animal insofar as you are not caring about reality and just living a life of pleasure seeking. Okay. And then in fact, you're worse than an animal because you're taking the truly human part of you and subordinating it to the animalistic part of you. Yeah, Ayala?
If you want to elaborate for another minute on your idea, you can. I have like a question. Okay, fine. So I guess this sounds to me a little bit different than my idea. So I'm just like, can I ask to see if it's the same or not? I was kind of thinking of it as like a little bit of a different steps of like it sounds to me like you're saying that you can to some extent partake of this knowledge, but it's just like completely misguided. And kind of what I was thinking was that like the steps are like an animal, and then in order to like you can't just go from like an animal to knowledge, but there's like this crucial step in between, which is like self-discipline. Okay.
Yeah.
And is that the same or not? I'm not sure.
I think that's a different idea, which is, I think that one is going to be closer to Rivki's idea. And I think we have to explore the difference between those two. Let me call in Tamar though. Yeah, Tamar?
I think that you could apply Avital's interpretation of like bar to this idea that I guess that Yosef said about how it's worse, right, to misuse your intellect. Yeah. That you're like really like destroying or wasting a potential.
Yeah. Yeah, I think so also. Yeah. I think the resistance to the particular, see, real knowledge is not just abstractions. Real knowledge is the particular. Like that's what an abstraction is like you're taking particulars and you're arriving at like something that universalizes that applies to all of them. And so if you hate the particulars, you can't love the universals and hate the particulars. You can't say like, oh, I love chesed, and then, but I don't want to do this chesed. Like that's not loving chesed. Yeah, Rivki?
So in your approach, like specifically, and I guess like also Ayala and Yosef, who would you say the audience is? Because I feel like it sounds like very specific, but I'm not really sure.
Yeah. So I would say that the audience is someone who is involved or allegedly involved in the pursuit of knowledge. Like that's what sparked this in terms of what Ayala said for me is like someone who thinks that all you have to do is just be involved in learning, and so I think it's someone who like knows that learning is a good life and they think that they are involved in learning. And this is saying, no, there's a crucial thing you have to be getting here. If your learning is not something that is synonymous and hand in hand with loving Musar, so then you're not really involved in learning the way that Judaism says. You're really just involved in something else,
I think that in addition, you could extend that, which is that it's a way to test your framework, meaning like the more you see your like own inconsistencies in that realm, which is that like you see that you're not acting like that, the more you can see and it works. I'm saying it works by degrees, meaning it's not just like black and white that, oh, you're a person who learns but doesn't act well. Yeah. Meaning there's people who will learn but have partial, like who will partially act well. And it's a good way to test, okay, what level am I at right now? And that's a good way to test where you are. It's not just like black and white.
Right. And I think that the test is even spelled out clear by the love of knowledge should be commensurate with the love of Musar. That's the ideal. In other words, you should be just as excited to hear an idea in physics, in Tosfos, and in like why you made a mistake. Like it should be, it's all that knowledge. And again, this is talking in Mishleic ideals. Like we don't always like embody that. There is a spectrum, but I think my dad was next. You're on mute. Still on mute. Still on mute.
So I'm going to open myself up to rebuke.
Okay.
And hopefully I won't hate it too much.
Okay.
Okay. I have an idea that may be trivializing what we talk about, but there may be some relationship to the pasuk.
Okay.
It's my favorite aphorism, which is good judgment comes from experience and experience comes from bad judgment.
Okay.
Is that what we're talking about? I mean, if you have the bad judgment and you actually accept the rebuke, that opens you up to the benefit of the knowledge and loving the knowledge.
So I think that facing the fact that you had bad judgment is a type, like that's in the realm of what we're talking about. But I think that's lower on the rung, because first of all, it's much easier to realize that you made a mistake than for someone else to point it out to you. You know, and I think there are a lot of people who will be willing to realize that they made mistakes, but they don't want to hear any input from anybody else. And then being able to accept it from anyone else is one thing, but actively seeking out rebuke is another thing. And that's really like the level that the pasuk is describing, is like loving it.
I guess I'm talking about, you can't accept you have bad judgment till you make the effort to understand it, track it down. I think that's what you're talking about. Yeah, I mean, that's definitely true. Is you do have to track it down. But what sounds like the approach that we're taking here is really like loving rebuke and loving knowledge means that you are seeking it out, not just like getting the result. Not by happenstance. Yeah, not by happenstance. Yeah. So I wouldn't say, so while the aphorism that you're saying is related, I would not walk away from tonight thinking that that's what this pasuk is, because that's taking the idea and then plugging it into an old idea, and you're not getting the main benefits out of this. Pretty gentle rebuke. That was, yeah. I appreciate it. And also, if you do that, then you're a horrible human being. So, is that better? Yes. Okay. It's more fitting. Okay. Okay, Ayala.
Okay, so I guess I'm having a hard time understanding what you mean by da'as. Like, do you mean something more than intellectual stimulation?
Yes. I mean, so if we're gonna go like on those the pasuk that we said before, okay, I'm not gonna quote the pasuk we said before. Da'as. Okay, let me just give an elementary definition of da'as for 1 second. I don't know if I can, but I'm gonna try. So chachma is received knowledge, okay? Like when you hear an idea from someone else. Tevuna is derived knowledge, when you come up with your own idea based on what you've learned. And then da'as is like your mind being in line with reality. Okay, da'as is like truth in the largest sense possible. Okay, when your mind corresponds to what exists. All right, and so it's the most all-encompassing of all the terms. All right, I don't know how to say it more than that. And so a person who thinks that they love da'as, but shuns all attempts to apply that knowledge to them, they can't really say they love da'as, because da'as means you are seeing the full picture and you're part of that full picture, or you're accepting the implications of that full picture. You're not just like saying, dry abstractions in your mind. You're seeing how this actually like impacts you, and you're living based off of it. So I don't know.
So yeah, that kind of does, but I'm still wondering, like, they're saying they love da'as, right? Is what you're saying?
Yeah.
Is there any truth to that? Like, is there anything that they do love in it? Because I feel like, according to what you're saying, if there is someone who is getting that type of like pleasure from truth, from learning, like, I feel like that just naturally would lead to this, like, wanting to learn more, and eventually to like this wanting to know the truth about character.
Okay, so I'm going to answer your question in two ways. The first answer to your question is, this is still Mishlei, so it still is expressing this in like an archetypal way, where, strictly speaking, if you hate any tochacha, then you don't love knowledge, but that's a very high bar, in which case, like, the only person who loves knowledge is Moshe Rabbeinu, so we're not going that far, but in the purest sense, to the extent that you hate tochacha, then you really don't love knowledge. That's the formula. Okay, but then to answer your question in a different way, is you're asking, like, if you love the intellectual stimulation of knowledge, would you eventually get to this point, where like you are like in other words, developmentally, how does this look? And I think that there are some people who, the more they love knowledge, the more it'll be like what I just described with Rabbi Moskowitz, where you start by applying Mishlei to other people, and eventually you apply it to yourself, and then naturally, like, you end up loving Musar also. But then there are going to be other people who are are specifically like resistant to, let's say you have a problem with authority figures, right? And let's say then you relate to God as an authority figure. And so you don't like being told what to do. So it's like, that's a bad mita that's going to block your ability. You're going to always have that roadblock unless like you work on it, you know? Or let's say you have a block in a certain area. Let's say like when it comes to halacha, you have no blocks. And when it comes to like science, you have no blocks. But when it comes to health, you don't want to change your eating habits, you know, or you don't want to change like your exercise habits, you know? So like there you might have like a particular block that you have to remove. So it's not necessarily going to be automatic. In theory, it would be automatic that you're eventually the knowledge will become real to you and then it will affect your emotions. But I think that there is such a thing as like having particular blocks that you need to work on.
So then it kind of feels like what you're saying and what I'm saying are like necessarily go hand in hand. Because what you're saying is you can't really come, like it's a test of if you love knowledge is if you're able to work on yourself. But how do you love knowledge if you work on yourself? Yeah, right. And that's why I think like the way I'm seeing your idea right now, your idea is classed more in terms of the approach that Rifki was taking, which is that this is like a developmental level, but you're putting the emphasis, Rifki's putting the emphasis on you should learn Musar so that you can learn knowledge. And I think your emphasis is more on when you learn knowledge, and that's going to naturally lead you to love Musar. If that makes sense. Yeah, I mean, I kind of feel like I align more with what Rifki was saying, but. Okay. Yeah, I mean, again, it could still be that I'm missing a nuance in your idea also. A lot of ideas flying around right now. Yeah. Okay. Before I call on Ariel and Rifki, Moshe's chat has been waiting very patiently here, so I'm just going to read his chat. Okay, so let me make this bigger. Okay. If Musar is punishing and Tochacha is intellectual convincing, so that's going with number 3 meaning here. Just 1 second here. Yeah, so that's going to the Malbim and the Hoil Moshe. A person who is dogmatic or harsh in exacting in someone when they perceive someone with bad ideas is a lover of Torah / the correct ideas because they're trying to spread them and get as many people to think it. But someone who does only that throws out intellectual reasoning out as animalistic because they're just completely dogmatic and don't value reason at all. Sets itself up as praising people who value / engage in Musar, but critiques those who do it solely. Audience is someone who engages in Musar. An Oiv Musar is one who acts harshly as a matter of public policy to get people to accept your ideas. Okay, so because I'm a little confused about some of the syntax issues in terms of like reading the sentences here, but let me just see if I can get this. If anyone can get this, or if Moshe wants to type more on this, then feel free to jump in. Okay, so a person who's dogmatic or harsh, when they perceive them as bad ideas, or Musar. Okay, so Moshe, are you saying that this pasuk is addressed at someone who's trying to reach other people? Yeah, okay. So if you love Musar, with this definition of Musar, that means someone who loves employing like, you know, whatever means necessary to get people to be attached to these ideas. And then they love, hold on a second, is the lover of Torah correct ideas? So no, maybe it's the other way around. If you love knowledge, if you love the correct ideas, then you will, person who is harsh values das for ideas because they want people to get das no matter what. Okay, fine. All right, so that's the first part. Okay. And then Sone Tochachas is bar, someone who hates spreading ideas through intellectual reasoning is animalistic because they are dogmatic. Okay, and they don't value reason at all. Okay, so in other words, maybe this is like, okay, so I'm going to try saying this the way I perceive it. And yeah, hold on a second. If you don't use reason, all you're okay. In other words, if you're trying to influence people, there are 2 ways to do it by force. No, I'm starting off the wrong foot. I think I'm getting like the core of how you're seeing it, but I'm not getting the way of reading the idea.
I could try and
sure. Go ahead.
Maybe.
Yeah.
I think it's like. Okay, so I'm not sure. Okay, I think the problem is how does this align with the wording for Musar and Tochacha, right?
Yeah.
But I guess it's like Yeah. Okay. Actually, I'm not.
There's an idea. There's an idea here. There's an idea here.
I feel like it's if Tochacha and Musar were switched, then I would understand. Maybe I don't understand the way it is.
You're saying dishing out Musar and the one who loves dishing out Musar, and
I think that's what he is saying. Someone who's using Musar and Tochacha for someone else. Yeah,
I mean, not for yourself. Okay,
not for themselves. Yeah, and that's a unique approach. I think we just overlooked that as an approach here.
Okay, can I try one more time? I think
sure.
Maybe you can explain it. Okay, yeah. I think that Moshe's idea, but Moshe, you can correct me, is like that he's saying that someone who is passionate about das and is trying to spread it is like that person will love Musar. Maybe you could see it indicated from their love of Musar that they love das, but if they're not willing to engage people in intellectual conversation, then you could see that they must be motivated by something else. Or something like that. So it's not really like it's like a
counterfeit.
Yeah, it's like a counterfeit. Something like that.
Other way around.
The other way around. Okay.
I feel like maybe if you change the wording, I mean the comma, like Ohev Musar, Ohev dot Visone, like can Sone be going backwards, or is Sone definitely Sone Tochacha?
Sone is definitely going on Tochacha. You can go out of order with these though. You can say one who loves not das loves Musar. That we said. Okay, why don't you think about it a little bit more, and we'll. It's much harder to have the real time dialogue. Yeah, I know it's frustrating to not be able to talk, but let's put it this way. Also, either you can type another version in the chat, or you can do a voice recording in the Mishlei after party chat that we can discuss it throughout the week. Okay, let's go back to Ariel.
Yeah, sorry, I just have to. Right. So wait. So your idea. Can you summarize your idea one more time? Because I had a question on it. I just want to. You.
So my idea is that the pasuk is about what it means to love knowledge. Loving knowledge is not just about loving ideas; it's about loving reality, and that means applying your knowledge to yourself. So if you can't apply your knowledge to yourself, you don't actually love knowledge.
Okay, good. So this might be a question on everyone's idea, but like,
okay,
why use the term bar? Like, meaning couldn't you?
Okay. I have an answer to that.
All right, I'm listening.
And this is it's a little bit speculative, and we have to be speculative because this is the only place where he uses the term bar, right? So like, I'm gonna go on a limb here. Mishlei usually is not making philosophical statements about what it is to be human, but here it is. Okay, here
say that one more time. Mishlei is not here to
make philosophical statements about what it means to be human. Here it's giving a definition that either you are an Ohev Das or you're a Bar. Those are the two like extremes. Either you're someone who's drawn to reality or you are shut off from reality and like are totally an animal, you know? And it's using these stark terms because like, again, the way that at least Yosef and I are interpreting this is it is a litmus test, and litmus tests have two results, you know, right. That like if you are not willing to look at yourself in light of your knowledge, you're as good as an animal. Like you're basically just like an animal. A fool who is devoid of knowledge and just animalistic, or you are someone who's drawn to knowledge. Like those are the two tracks you're on.
Okay.
You could even like align this with Rivki and Ayala by saying it's talking about developmentally. You're either on the Ohev Das track or you're on the Bar track.
Okay, and I have two more questions. One is okay. Now let's say we were outside of Mishlei for a second. How will we take it?
How would we take Bar?
Yeah, meaning meaning you mentioned in Mishlei is not. You mentioned Mishlei is not here to give us philosophical ideas, but now let's say we were outside of Mishlei, how will we?
Oh, no, I'm saying that Mishlei here is giving you a non-Mishleic idea because it has Mishleic implications. You know, Mishlei is not concerned with what is the essence of man. You know, here it is though, because here defining the essence of man in this way, like is the whole endeavor of Mishlei. Like if you think that you can be a philosopher and not learn Mishlei, then you are severely misguided. That's what this pasuk is saying. That person who thinks he could be a philosopher and not learn Mishlei is like an animal.
Okay. And Got it. And now, if you have someone who, and this might be touching back onto Avital's, I don't know if she's still here, but on her idea. Yeah. But now let's say, now according to your idea, would it apply to anyone? Meaning even someone who does generally like rebuke, but at the same time, he sometimes, it's a bad day. He doesn't want anyone giving rebuke that day. I don't know, whatever it is. Like, is it instances, or is it like,
the way I'm saying it is this is speaking in the same way that Mishlei always speaks in absolutes and archetypes. This is speaking that way. Like, yeah, it is possible to have a bad day, and that doesn't necessarily reflect who you are. But Mishlei is setting forth like as a way of life. If you were someone, you make it easy. You could say it like this. You could say, if you were someone who regularly hates rebuke, then you've got this problem. And if you're someone who regularly loves rebuke, then you're on the right track. If you have a bad day, or if someone like catches you at the wrong moment or whatever, then that doesn't like put you into these absolute categories. Right.
I'm sorry. I guess my question is like, like for me, like what can I walk away with that's applicable to me from this pasuk? I still feel like that answer, like,
yeah, what you walk away with practically is two things. One is that if you are the intended audience of this pasuk, which is someone who allegedly is involved in knowledge and who spends your time in knowledge, and you find yourself hating rebuke, you have to connect this to Mishlei and realize, I cannot be a philosopher if I am not loving rebuke. And this is a flaw in my knowledge. That's the essential point. And then look, I'll show you how fundamental this idea is. This is the first pasuk in Mishlei. This is, or the key pasuk in Mishlei. Whoops. Oh, what did I do? This is the Mishlei 1:7. Yiras Hashem Reishis Das, Chachma Musar Evilim Bazu. Fear of Hashem is the beginning of knowledge, but Evilim hate Chachma and Musar. So either you're someone who is involved in Da'as, or you hate Chachma and Musar. Like, you can't be involved in Da'as and hate Chachma and Musar. You're either one or the other. So when you, like, someone rebukes you and you're like, I don't want to think about that. Like, that is a crack in your valuing of Das. Like, you're not actually if you really just like wholeheartedly reject that tochacha, you've got something wrong with your attachment to Das.
Right. So who is this pasuk talking to according to your idea? Like,
talking to someone who wants to be involved in knowledge, or who thinks he's involved in knowledge, but who is who hates rebuke, or who is in danger of hating rebuke. On the fence. Yeah.
Got it.
And we all hate rebuke. That's the thing. We all hate rebuke. We're not necessarily in this category yet. There's a spectrum,
Yeah, that's another thing. Like everyone hates rebuke, but they just, meaning like I hate rebuke, but like I have to suck it up, like, to get
right. But it's a spectrum.
So like, you
can get from hating rebuke to then accepting it, not hating it, and then appreciating it, and then seeking it out. That's like what we've said for some of the other ideas.
You could seek it out. We're not just saying like base like emotional love, right? It's saying it's something more than that, which is that like it's something. It's like you said, it's reflecting your actions. Meaning, if it's something you pursue, right, even if you don't enjoy when it's happening, right, I would still say if you're someone who pursues musar and uses it and tries that, you would be considered an ohev musar.
Yeah, like if you want to substitute the word love with value, one who values musar, one who values.
So you could pursue musar, but also hate it. But but you're still valid.
Yeah, it doesn't mean it's going to feel good. Yeah, it doesn't mean it's going to feel good.
Got it. Okay.
Yeah. Okay, Rifki.
Yeah, two things. Number one is in terms of the second translation of like Musar and Tochacha, where did you get the second one?
Second one is from generally. So Tochacha is just like what you said from the Torah. Tochacha, I think, just means rebuke. But then Musar is like in, I think we looked at this last time. In the purpose of Mishlei is Ladas Chachma Musar. Musar is Rabinu Yona says, wait, no, I think we're done. What happened? I thought there used to be a commentary of the Radak on this. Anyway, Rabinu Yona says Musar is like the study of the imperfections of the Rishaim and telling you the consequences of their actions. I think there's a Radak that says Musar is, let's see, here's the Radak. Musar is like the improvement, the study of Midos. Oh, there it is. Musar is Hayisurin. No. Yeah, whatever. Yeah. The consequences that come to a person from foolishness. So it's the study of like Mishlei, basically.
Okay, so then, and my second question was in terms of, I also like specifically want to ask you, because obviously you're a teacher, and obviously like I'm not like bypassing myself from this pasuk, but I was just wondering, like, when you're in a position of wanting to educate people and you see someone like that's like this, like how do you approach that? Because I feel like I've been in situations where it's exactly like that and it's really frustrating to deal with.
Yeah. That's a good question. I think that's a part of a broader question of when do you give tochacha to someone and when do you not? And that's I think that's too big of a question for me to answer as a particular of this year. Yeah. And look, there are also like, that's a genre of Mishlei pasukim of, there are a lot of pasukim about who you give rebuke to and who you don't, and what type of rebuke you give to the people. This one's not really talking about how to. This is talking about the attachment to the rebuke.
Yeah, I don't know if I could also just like ask you a different time, but I think I was asking more about like not how to rebuke someone, but more like if you are, let's say, learning with someone that would be in this category, like how do you, I guess, you approach learning with that person? Yeah, I think to me, in my mind, that's a very involved question. So let's not take it up right now. We do it in the chat. Yeah, Tamar?
I have two questions. The first one, it sounds based on what you just said, is probably outside the scope of this shiur also, which is like, just like, how do you do this? How do you progress in this way? Okay. I guess maybe the only thing this pasuk is telling you is like, wake up and realize that you might be having this problem.
No, this I think is an important part of the pasuk. Okay. Which is that anytime you find yourself being rebuked and then wanting to shut it out, you should realize that like, I am denying reality, and that I can't be someone who thinks of himself, who fancies themselves I can't be someone who fancies himself a lover of truth and knowledge if I'm shutting out reality. And like, you know, there's more to do with, in terms of the particular of like, how do you deal with that particular resistance? That part I'm not going into, but like the takeaway from this pasuk is to like, I think people come up with all other sorts of labels when they hate rebuke. Again, like many times they'll just chalk it up like, oh, this person is being nitpicky, or like I'll work on that later, or like this person is just projecting. You know, what this person wants you to do is say, am I denying reality, and do I realize what that's going to do to my attachment to knowledge? You know, like reality is not compartmentalized. You know, it's not like there's all knowledge that doesn't pertain to you and the knowledge that pertains to the parts of you don't want to change. You could just ignore that part. That's not how it works, you know? And so I think like making that step is the key takeaway from this pasuk. And it is a weird thing because, you know, usually we try to look for a practical action-based decision thing. Here, I think it really is an internal thing. And the pasuk is talking about ahava and sina, like it's talking about love and hate. So it is talking about the internal world.
Okay, interesting. So then maybe it's not telling you, let's say, how to like actively seek out rebuke or something like that. That would be
I don't think it is. And then there are other pasukim about that also, about how other pasukim about like listening to chachamim, you know, or hanging around tzaddikim, you know, and being open to the discipline of your father, you know. Shema b'ni musar avicha v'al titosh Torah simecha. That's the first pasuk in chapter 10. You know, that's about how to relate to the musar of your father and your mother. You know, and so like that, there's a lot more how-to pasukim. This is not a how-to pasuk.
Okay, interesting. I had a question on Isaiah's idea from the beginning of shiur, but maybe I don't know if this is maybe save it for the after party.
Yeah, sure. That's good.
The timing. Yeah. Okay.
I think we want to wrap it up. So I want to read one of the meforshim here. Actually, I want to read two of them. Okay, Rביnu, Yona, and meiri. All right, and then we'll try to wrap it up. Okay, Rביnu Yona says, hold on. Okay, im tira adam. Oh, this might answer Ariel's question about like, what if you're having a bad day? Okay, so just keep that in mind. Im tira adam shenichshal b'masav v'himashcho achar ta'avosav. So if you see a person who stumbles in his actions, like makes a bad decision because he was drawn after his desires, v'yitav be'inav kasher yochichuhu, but it's good in his eyes when you rebuke him, teda, you should know kihu ish das, that this is a man of knowledge. V'nafsho mikabelas divrei haskel, and his soul is receptive to words of rationality. Ubocheres badas, and he chooses knowledge. But his taiva, his desires overwhelmed him to make him sin. Therefore, therefore, because he out of his love of knowledge, he will love musar, and he'll prefer it. When people rebuke him, and he will hope that people will rebuke him to help him, and will help him to like control his spirit and overpower his yetzer. Okay, so that's the first guy. So just to summarize, if you see a person who makes a bad decision because they were overwhelmed by their taiva, and you rebuke them and they like it, so then that is a man of knowledge. And even though he stumbled, but we all stumble, everyone gets overwhelmed by their taivas, that person is gonna like develop in terms of knowledge, and he's gonna be drawn to musar. Okay. But sonei tochachas ba'ar, achrei asher yisna hatochachas, if he hates tochacha, ksil ubarhu, he is a fool and an idiot. The nafsho nimshachas b'chavirta, achrei hataiva. I don't know if that's a typo. Let me look at my good Rבינו Yona. The nafsho. Nimshachas b'bechira sa. It's drawn after its bechira. Its choice of he kenefesh behema, and then it's like an animal, and he brings a bunch of proofs that it's like an animal. So what he's saying here is he's giving a different kind of litmus test. He's saying that like it's not the making of the mistake that indicates whether someone is a fool or a person of das. It's how they respond to the rebuke. If they respond to the rebuke in a desirous way, then they really are a person who loves knowledge and is attached to knowledge. But then look, we're all in stages of development. We all get like overwhelmed by our animalistic desires. But if the person hates rebuke, then he doesn't say this, but even though he is a person who like, has knowledge, he's really an animal, So the main quality that we care about here is whether you, how you respond to the rebuke.
That's interesting because like in his first paragraph, it seems like, it sounds like you should tell someone if you know he likes rebuke, but if you don't know, then what do you do? Is he just assuming, is he just testing them out, or is he like coming in with the knowledge of that person?
Yeah, I think Rבינו is conveniently sidestepping that issue, because the way he says it is, he says, if you see a person who stumbles in his actions and it's good in his eyes when you rebuke him, then you know he's a man of knowledge. So he's not answering the question, how do you know whether you should rebuke him or not?
Interesting.
I think those are other psukim, yeah.
So okay, it's like you're testing him out a little bit.
I don't even know if Rבינו is saying. He's saying if you do rebuke him, like let's say for example, this is talking to a teacher who's in a position where like he has to like be in charge of like the behavior or learning of someone else, and you rebuke a student and you see that they appreciate it versus you see that they hate it, like then you can apply this idea. Yeah. Okay.
So practically, what do you do with that? Sorry.
I don't know. It's a good question. That you could think about that for later. I just wanted to expose you to these ideas, but I do want to try to wrap up here. Yeah. Quick question, Tamar.
It kind of sounds like he's saying a different idea, like that the way you respond to the rebuke tells you about the sin that he did, or do you think that's not what it's saying?
No, it's saying that if you see him, then teda kihu ish das, you should know that he is a man of knowledge. V'nafsho mikabels divrei haska, and his soul is a soul that receives words of intelligence. U'bucheres b'das, and he's choosing das, but he was overwhelmed by his taiva. I think he's saying what kind of person he is, and I'm saying that also because it fits into the word. Ohev musar, ohev das. If you see a person who loves musar, that means that they are a lover of knowledge.
It just sounds to me like it's saying though that the when he sinned, it was like not reflecting his essence, which is an ish das, and that the other one is like his he was really all in on the taiva, so he didn't want the rebuke. Okay, I see what you're saying. Also, yeah, it does seem to be that it is a test to see how his bechira was. Yeah, I see that. Yeah, I don't know what to make of that. Yeah, and I'm fading very fast. Okay, so I just want to get to this meiri. I also got very, very little sleep last night, so I can feel my mind shutting down. Okay, so I just want to get on meiri as I'm drowning in sleeplessness. Okay, meiri says oev musar oev das sonei tochachas bar hamusar v'hatochachas ba'im hina al shleimus amidos. So both, he says they're synonyms. Musar and tochachas both refer to perfection of midos. V'das al shleimus haseichel,
This is, I think, close to what Rivki was saying, and maybe Ayala also. Das means perfection of intellect. Ba'ar al neder hayedia v'heyoso niskal min chachma. Ba'ar means you're void of knowledge and you're ignorant of chachma. Nigzar miloshin be'ir shu tirgum behema. So it's also derived from animal. Okay. V'yadua sheshlemus hamidos mevo ushvil l'shlemus haseichel. Just like Rivki was saying, it's known that perfection of midos is a path and a entranceway to perfection of the intellect. L'chein, therefore, ohev musar, therefore, rotzalomor, maskim dato ladav kabo. If someone makes the decision to cling to musar, ohev das, then that person loves knowledge. V'az yasi orchos chaim, then he will attain the ways of life, meaning he'll get perfection of intellect and he'll get eternal life. The hefko, and the opposite, v'husonei hatochachas yishar bar v'niskal hayedia. If you hate tochacha, you will remain a animalistic fool and void of knowledge. Zehu bir hamikra l'fi nistar. That is the esoteric explanation of the pasuk. Vanigla, and the exoteric, the external meaning is dvarim pshutim, simple things. Sham musar v'tochachas shemos nirdafim. Musar and tochacha are synonyms. Umisha ohev v'tochachas ohev das. Someone who loves rebuke loves knowledge. L'kabel etza ulasadir inyanav al ofane hanhaga yishara ubalas toalas v'kavon. Someone who loves rebuke loves knowledge. He loves getting advice about how to arrange his actions in an upright way to get the most maximum benefit. Lahefek lahefek, and the opposite. Okay, so I don't know what that means, but the first one is, I think, alluding to what we were saying before about how you need perfection of midos in order to get perfection of intellect. Okay, so quick summary, and then I gotta stop. So Rivki and partial Ayala, maybe I still don't exactly know how to classify Ayala because I hear Ayala's idea in both, is saying that you are not going to be able to reach levels of das unless you work on your musar. There are going to be impediments to knowledge that are that can only be gotten rid of through musar. And I think we didn't go through examples, but obvious examples are like, if you are haughty, you love your own ideas, you don't like seeing yourself as wrong, you have a certain block to a certain area of knowledge. You're not going to be able to get knowledge if you have these blocks, and therefore you need to work on your emotions in order to get knowledge. And if you hate tochacha, then you're going to ever be barred from that. Barred from that. That's an unintentional pun. All right. Isaiah says that if you love particular instances of musar, that will lead you into the whole subject matter of mishlei, and that'll benefit you even more. You'll climb the ladder through that. So you start by just being involved in what, it's funny. When I first started teaching mishlei, in high school, I would pick psukim that specifically related to things that students could relate to, like specific psukim that relate to like high school problems. But, the next level of development, because I thought that, okay, students are going to just turn off their minds if it's something that can't relate to. But what happens is you find the thing that Isaiah is saying is you start learning psukim that are relate to you, and you eventually start becoming interested in psukim even though they don't relate to you, because you're interested in mishlei per se. Ariel is talking about how there is a spectrum of a bar and a lover of knowledge, but the way to hop onto the virtuous cycle is through the love of the particular musar, and then that'll attach you more knowledge, which will attach you to more musar, and then it'll go, upward. And if you hate tochacha, that'll cut you off from knowledge, which will make you more ignorant, which will cut you off more knowledge, and that'll go back the down way. Avital is saying that you might think that you love knowledge and musar, meaning in the sense of character development. But if you also hate the individual rebukes, then you don't really love knowledge and musar. You can't claim to be growth oriented and love working on your midos if you don't actually like tochacha. And then Yosef and I, and also Ayala, I think we're saying that this is a litmus test for whether you're truly attached to knowledge, which means that you're willing to live your life in accordance with it, or if you're just attached to knowledge for some other reason, like for kavod or for intellectual stimulation or whatever, in which case you want to just not apply this to yourself because it's too painful. Okay, we're going to stop here for tonight, and I'm going to go to sleep. But this is a good, rich, very basic, fundamental pasuk, which oddly enough, I could see being a good introductory pasuk, but I could also see it being one that you can't really appreciate unless you've learned a lot of mishlei. So I think it's good. All right, and we can continue the chat throughout the week in the discussion chat. So have a good night. Thanks for coming, and until next time.
Thank you. Good night.
Thank you. Have a good night.